Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Onboard story. We are here at Spa-Francorchamps and this is one that I've been hoping to share or been dying to share for more than a year now, but I've been keeping this lap quiet. It's the lap where I managed to break the lap record around Spa in a GT3 car. So I managed to hold this lap record for a year. It was eventually beaten this year by Patrick Hujela in his Lamborghini GT3. But yeah, Coach Dave over here, who was pretty much a racing fan, somehow managed to hold the lap record around Spa in a GT3 car for over a year. So pretty proud of that. There is a story around it, around the motivation of why I was so psyched up on this day, and of course the lap itself was pretty cool to watch. So I'm pretty excited to share it with you guys finally. So the premise is this. At the beginning of the year I was bronze, and then I got upgraded to silver, and effectively lost all my opportunities as a driver until Rinaldi Racing gave me an opportunity to race with them at Paul Ricard, which I have shared in a previous video called Proving That I'm a Professional. However, after that race, I was pushing as hard as I could to race with them in the Spa 24 hours. I had a good result the previous year. We won it in the AM class, and I wanted to give it another shot in 2018. So Michele Rinaldi, the team owner, he was nervous to put me in their Pro-Am lineup because he wanted to put a higher ranked driver in my position. But I was saying to him, look, I can do the job, just give me the chance. So he said to me, okay, we are going to be racing in the GT Open at Spa about a month before the Spa 24 hour. So you'll obviously be racing in that race with your teammate Vadim. However, during that event, you have to get pole position, you have to get fastest lap, and you have to lead the race. If you do those three things, then I'll consider you for the lineup for the Spa 24 hours. Now keep in mind that up until this point I'd never set any fastest laps in a sort of pro category. I'd never qualified in pole position in any pro categories, and I definitely hadn't led any races in any pro categories. Up until this point I was pretty much an AM driver who'd just been upgraded to semi-pro. So obviously I said yes, okay, I'll try and do my best. And we arrived at Spa for the GT Open, and in Friday practice I was in the top 5, but I didn't get any clean laps, and the guys ahead of me were doing sort of 2:19s and I was doing 2:20s. I did have one lap which on the predicted timer was a 2:19, but the guys in the pits, they didn't believe me because I actually had to box at the end of that lap anyway, and the data didn't show that I was on for a 2:19. So the pressure was mounting. I really wanted to prove that I was fast enough to be in their car for the Spa 24 hours. However, truth be told, I wasn't really expecting to be anywhere near pole position or anywhere near lap record or anything of the sort. I just wanted to say, look, I can do enough, and hopefully that enough will get me that seat in the lineup. So woke up in the morning for qualifying. It was cold and misty, but the track temperature was not that low, and it created ideal conditions to do a good lap in qualifying. Headed out, and keep in mind the day before I hadn't even broken the 2:20s, and almost immediately in the first run on the Michelin tires, we use Michelin's in GT Open, I'd already done a 2:17. Then starting this lap that we are now, which was they told me, okay David, you P1, and but the other guys are catching us, you need a box soon for a new set of tires. All I replied was copy, and I thought to myself, he must mean P1 class, which is the Pro-Am class that I was racing in at the time. But what Michele actually meant was P1 overall against all the pros, etc. So I didn't really know this. These laps were, at this point, pretty big laps for me personally. I was almost flat through Eau Rouge, definitely flat in Blanchimont, which you're heading to now, and almost flat in Stavelot too. But I think at the time I knew that those 3 corners probably could all be taken flat. However, I was probably going to require another set of tires to unlock that kind of pace. That being said, a 2 minute 16.8, which you can see on the dash here, was way faster than I'd ever been before around this track, and I didn't even know that was even possible with the GT3 cars. So obviously conditions are playing to our advantage, but all that being said, the Michelin tire truly does give you a huge amount of grip with these cars. So then we crossed the line, 2:16.4, And again, just thinking to myself, wow, the pace is crazy. So then we boxed, we come in for new tires, and I'm now thinking to myself, okay, I'm still P1, but the other guys are catching. No one's reported any drop-off in position for me, but I knew that whenever you box for new tires, you have to find some more time. And already now I'm pretty like amped up and thinking to myself, how am I going to find these lap times? How am I going to find more time? The 2 minute 16.4 was already a pretty neat lap, but nonetheless, you sit and you wait. I think it's a 30-minute qualifying session. I stand to be corrected. 30 minutes or 15 minutes. I do stand to be corrected. But you can sit for a while in the pit lane, thinking too much about the lap time. However, I asked the guys, send me out as soon as you can, which also helps with keeping temperature in the tires, because I want to get these laps done and let's just see where we land up. Already, I'm thinking to myself, okay, in some ways I've overachieved, but I know I can go flat in 1 or 2 corners, so let's give it a try. So now we're going to head into that lap. Here's the preparation. I did 1 out lap, and immediately for the next lap was my push lap. So I'll just keep quiet while you watch it. Boom, so there you go, 2 minute 15.8. This lap proved to be good enough for pole position, but cruelly my team engineer Michele, he came on the radio and said the other guys are going much quicker in sector 1. So I thought, oh my god, here we go, I have to take Eau Rouge flat and try and complete the lap. Already I didn't know how I was going to get better than 2:15, but we go through Eau Rouge flat for the first time in my life, a little bit of oversteer on the exit, and now that I've done it flat after doing this lap, I've actually ended up doing it flat in quite a few series with different tires. So it just turned out it is very much a psychological thing. It's not a given that you can take Eau Rouge flat, you have to respect it. But once I sort of got over that hurdle, it became a much relatively easier corner for me going forward. In the end, I got the pole position, and then I was informed later that it was actually a lap record, so I didn't even know that at the time. Only later in the afternoon the officials came to me and notified me of that, which was sort of the icing on the cake. In the race itself, I ended up leading the race during my stint and set the fastest lap, so I fulfilled the criteria that Michele asked of me. And in the end, he held up his part of the bargain, I suppose, and gave me a seat at the Spa 24 Hour, which we went on to win in the Pro-Am category after some insane strategy calls and pretty fast driving in the nights. So that was a back-to-back Spa 24 Hour victory in 2 different classes with 2 different rankings, plus the lap record around here. Needless to say, Spa does rank as one of my favorite tracks to drive. It's not my top. Imola still has the top, but Spa is obviously right up there, and when you do well at tracks, you obviously enjoy them more. So that was that. In this lap here, I tried to break that time again, but I made 1 or 2 mistakes in the final sector, which ended up costing me, I think, half a tenth or so, and I crossed the line on a 2:15.9. But my engineer Michele again informs me that it wasn't enough. So even at this point now, I have no idea whether I'm on pole or not. So we're going to have to try 1 more lap. But in the end, I was pushing so hard to get these lap times, and given that I was probably the first person to break a 2:16 around here, I was actually shaking. I was starting to scare myself with the speed I was trying to take these corners at. And I've never felt that before or since. Just shaking so much after the lap because of the commitment that I had. And when I got out the car, I was actually pretty emotional. I went to the back of the pit garage. Obviously, it was my first pole position against pros as well, and I couldn't believe that I'd managed to pull something like this off. So here I made big mistakes in Lacoon. The tires by now were gone. Michelin tires around this track generally give you 2 push laps if they're preheated, and then after that you lose the peak. And as explained in previous videos, the peak is when you just get a combination of maximum grip and temperature and pressure in the tire, and you can just feel that the grip is there. So I'd gone slightly past the peak and was now taking unnecessary risks to try and go faster, and it just wasn't going to happen. So I decided around Puan over here, I could see on my delta that I was going to be slower, and effectively aborted the lap mentally. I was still going to push just to see if we could get the Stavalos 1 and 2 perfect, but if they weren't going to be perfect, I was going to head into the pit. So mentally, in one way, sort of checked out, still trying to get the lap, but satisfied with that was the maximum that I could give. And came into the pits, and everyone was super calm and relaxed, and I just looked at the screen, saw that I was P1. There was still 10 minutes left in the session, so I boxed quite early compared to everyone else, but no one could top the time, and managed to pull off. Frankly, at this time, this was a miracle for me. So yeah, there you go. That's the story of how I managed to break the lap record at Spa. Some of you some commenters before have mentioned that James Collado holds the lap record, but that's with the Pirelli tire in Blancpain, and I believe his super pole time was 2 minutes 17 point something. Quite recently, I raced in the GTE class, which is some people call the GT2s, and we were actually easily able to do 2 minute 15s in qualifying on the Dunlop Confidential, but that's an entirely different car that looks like a Ferrari 48 GT3. So anyway, I really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much to my patrons and to my channel sponsors. If you want to grab some David Perel or Coach Dave merchandise, feel free to go to shop.davidperel.net, where there's caps, hoodies, t-shirts, etc. Until the next video, I really hope you enjoyed this, found it interesting, hope you enjoyed the lap. Otherwise, I'll catch you around the next video and around the next lap. Cheers.